the first and only hitchhiker I will ever pick up. By Salty Siren XO. So last Friday, I, 25F, had a little time to kill before picking my kids up from school, and it was a gorgeous day, so I decided to spend some time cruising some back roads in my hometown, small, rural, listening to music. I passed this guy with his thumb out trying to catch a ride, and I almost picked this guy up. He looked to be about late 30s, early 40s, carrying a fishing pole and a backpack. Pretty innocent looking, I guess. But see, I'm a lone female and have been taught with hundreds of hitchhiker gone wrong stories that you just keep driving. So I kept driving, and as I'm driving, I'm having this internal dialogue of guilt about my decision not to pick up this guy. You know, if I was hitchhiking, I'd hope someone would pick me up, and I mean, really, what's the worst that could happen? That mixed with my new self-improvement goal of doing the things that scare me as often as possible led me to the conclusion that if, when I looped back around and he was still walking, I would pick him up. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, he was still there. I was feeling a little nervous, pulling over getting him, but what was I going to do? Peel out while he was trying to get in my vehicle? As soon as he gets in, I realize I've probably made a horrible mistake. One, because he seemed like he was tweaking balls and smelled god-awful. Because this dude was looking at me like I was a feast and he was starved. I didn't realize exactly how rattled I was with my decision until he asked me for a smoke, and my hands were shaking so bad I barely pulled one out of my pack without breaking it. Driving made it easier to hide my nerves, but I was internally freaking out and trying to decide how I would beat this guy's ass if he tried anything. His name is Wayne, and he lives about 5 minutes from where I picked him up. Meanwhile, he's telling me how he lost his license due to DUIs and how he is living in this house with an old man. He tried to get him to come with him, but he didn't want to come, etc. He's also trying to talk me into hanging out at said house with him and come over and drink with him the next day. When I finally get him to his destination, it's a little shack-like thing surrounded by all these junk cars and shit. He gets out and is trying still to get me to come inside with him. I tell him no and leave. I'm feeling really relieved and a little proud that I faced a fear of mine. Fast forward to Monday, my instructor says, "Holy shit. Apparently someone got murdered down the so-and-such road. Do you know anyone down that way?" I say, "Wow. You know, that's really ironic. I took a hitchhiker down that road Friday. His name was Wayne, I think." Probably wasn't 15 minutes later when I see old Wayne's picture on Facebook saying the TBI has picked him up for stabbing someone to death at the very house I dropped him off at Friday. Graphic information of how he stabbed him in the lungs and the victim bled out in that little shack. And the old man he was living with doesn't even exist. I swear I'll never pick up another hitchhiker in my life. Creeper in the Woods by DJ Buffoon. This happened about 13 years ago when I was a sophomore in college, attending a liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or two of freshman year, I'd found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks, 6 GUYS, myself included, and 1 girl. And they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough, but we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. We did some research and found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away, infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 7 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot, and you are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads surrounded by trees. Very few street lights, and very few houses. Without a GPS or a good sense of direction, one could easily get lost in there. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights, JUS'd in case. But the goal was to keep driving, until we collectively decided to pull over and go exploring. So per the directions, we made a left off of the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so into this dark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn, and to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see what exactly this was, stepped over the log, and noticed two narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say, the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched. But I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And in any case, the whole point of us being there was to get scared. Not to mention the fact that we were 7 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing. And I mean massive. It was a large open field of unkempt grass, comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned, and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark, with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it, and sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows, and what I could see was an old white couch, covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone, because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway. We decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked towards the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His expression dropped, and he pointed. We all turned, and on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see someone tall, lanky, and pale, dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree. Basically a do-si-do. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark, it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6 feet 4 inches skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointed in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing. Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit, and the second that he saw it, he gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm, and whispered, "What the fuck is that?" What happened next sent shockwaves through all of us. Whoever this was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked and ran back to the trail. Yet again, Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy shit!" I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away, in closer to 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone else was feeling the same way. Nearly 15 years later, we are all still friends, living in different states, yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods, that really happened, right?" It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing maniacally in the woods at 1 a.m. and then ran directly for a group of young adults, not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the sound that I kept hearing when we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, when he came for us that night, you can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of. Psycho Granny by Bears Live in the Woods. I was maybe 8, which would make my sister 12. My brother wasn't born yet, and I'm 9 years older than him, so had to be before then. Our parents were out for their anniversary dinner, which meant they'd be out till probably 12. My sister was very responsible and capable in babysitting me, and I didn't find out till years later, but apparently my parents warned my sister that our grandma, my dad's mom, was manic depressive, which is old-timey talk for bipolar. They told her she was mad at my dad for holding some boundary with her and to not let her in or even respond to her if she came by the house. Of course, none of this was communicated to me. How could you tell an 8-year-old something like that? Anyway, a couple hours into the evening, we hear a knock on the door. My sister immediately shushes me and holds her finger over her lips. "Robbie, I know you're in there. Robbie, come open the door." I remember it like it was yesterday. I could tell it was my grandma, but I could also tell that something wasn't right. My sister moves us to the hallway, where we sit quietly, out of sight of any windows. Grandma keeps pounding on the door, demanding my dad let her in. Then it goes quiet for a while. I start to relax a bit. Of course that doesn't last. Suddenly a bedroom window starts getting slammed, and my grandma sounds like a fucking demon screaming for my dad. I've never heard such anger since. She moves across the whole house, pounding on every window. If she wasn't so old, she would surely have broken a window, with the absolute fury she was exuding. Then it goes quiet again, but now I know better than to relax. We are just huddled together in the hallway, in complete silence. I'm shaking like a leaf, and so is my sister. This grandma had played games with my sister to hurt my parents in the past, such as taking her to the mall and going to the register with some jewelry and then saying, "Never mind," or buying the same jewelry for our cousin. Seriously twisted shit. As I'm typing this, I'm thinking, I need to talk to my therapist about it now. So it's been quiet for a while, and out of nowhere, we hear Grandma putting on this sweet, sweet voice and directly addressing us and trying to coax us with candy to open the door. She always had a shit ton of candy around since she was also a diabetic in serious denial. This was the most surreal experience, as she had just sounded like Satan himself, and now she sounded like a sweet old granny again. She almost got me. Thankfully, my sister was wise beyond her years and held me tightly. Finally, it's quiet for about an hour, and my sister says, "It's time for bed." My bedroom faced the backyard, which had a pool and a high wall, beyond which was a vast empty field with an old railroad track through it. I was used to hearing coyotes, foxes, and other animals outside. Right as I'm winding down to fall asleep, the absolute loudest scratching on my window starts as if fucking Freddy Krueger himself was trying to haunt my dreams. I could see the silhouette of my grandma in the moonlight, as it was a full moon that night. I haven't thought about this in years, and my hair is standing at full attention on my neck as I'm typing this. Holy shit. No other windows got scratched that night, just mine. Then it was over. I woke up the next day and my sister was telling our parents all about it. I couldn't even be in the room while it was being discussed. A few weeks later, she died from an E. coli infection. She died like Elvis, on the toilet. At her viewing, they put on one of her classic flowy blouses, and there was a breeze that lifted it up a bit, causing one of my cousins to shout, "She's alive!" and run away. After the funeral, I told my mom and dad that I was glad she was gone, and according to my mom, I said, "Grandma really stressed me out." She later told me no child of my age at the time should have to say their grandma stressed them out. Oh, Mom, she did more than stress me out. She terrified me more than any horror film or scary story or freaky night in the woods ever could, and I had plenty of those with my dad, who was an absolute wild mountain man. Both my parents are gone now, and I wish I would have told them about my experience that night. But I trust that my sister told them what they needed to know. Now I have a 4-year-old daughter, and my wife's parents are the complete opposite of my grandparents. Both sides of my family had seriously fucked up histories. It makes me cry when I look at pictures of her with her grandma and grandpa at their farm, riding a horse or chasing a chicken. I'm glad she gets to have the classic grandparent experience. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be talking to my therapist about this. P.S. I don't want anyone to think that I believe mental illness equals more violent. My wife and I both work in mental health, and despite my personal experiences with my psycho granny, I don't project that onto anyone else who suffers from mental illness. It manifests in so many ways, the vast majority of which are not violent. In fact, mentally ill people are far more likely to be the victims of violence than perpetrators. I think my kid's father killed one, maybe two people by lopsided teaching 9547. So, yeah, here's my theory. I'd love to hear your thoughts because this story might have a few parts. I'm 44 now, but when I was 15, I started dating a boy I'll call Jack. We ended up having 3 kids together, 4 in total. Our first child came when I was 17, and Jack was 16. We married, but after 10 years, we divorced. Now let me give you a little background on Jack. He was the youngest of 3. His mother had Jack and his sister, but his older brother was from a different relationship. Jack's mom was an alcoholic, and eventually her drinking caught up to her. She was in a near-fatal car crash that left her paralyzed from the waist down. After that, she used a cane to walk. During her recovery, Jack's aunt, Carolyn, who was more like a mother figure, took Jack and his sister in. From the time Jack and I started dating, he was always addicted to something. Drugs, pills, sex, cheating, video games, you name it. He was always spiraling into some kind of addiction. And let me tell you, Jack was abusive. I never saw him be abusive to his mom or Carolyn, but I witnessed his abuse toward me and every other woman he was with after me. In fact, the girl he's with now, he's nearly killed her several times. His wife after me, he once locked her in a trunk and threatened to drown her in a lake near their house. He's toxic to his kids too. To this day, my children want nothing to do with him. They might speak to him briefly if they have to, but they avoid him whenever possible. I haven't been around Jack in years, but about 8 years ago, I started dating someone who was acquaintances with him. So over the past few years, I've found myself in situations where I've crossed paths with Jack. Nothing major, just quick encounters when my boyfriend needed to help him with something related to his car. A while back, my kids told me something strange about the time Jack's Aunt Carolyn passed away. Oddly enough, Jack told my boyfriend and me the same story during one of those brief encounters. To this day, I can't stop running the scenario through my head because I know Jack too well, and there's definitely more to this story. Carolyn was the woman who took care of Jack and his sister when his mom was recovering from the wreck. She was always close to him, especially after her husband died. From what I know, he didn't pass away long after getting out of prison for murder, but I don't know all the details. Jack seemed to be close to Carolyn when she passed, so when he said he hadn't heard from her in a few days, it made me wonder about their relationship. Carolyn was an alcoholic too, but she kept to herself about it and didn't bother anyone. At least that's how I remembered it. Jack said that when he hadn't heard from her in a while, he went to check on her. He drove to her house, about a 15-minute drive, and when he got there, she didn't answer the door. So he said he broke a window to get in. Once inside, he found her on the floor, unalived. He said she had wrapped a phone cord around her neck. Then he took a picture of her body and sent it to my kids. They confirmed this before calling the police. But here's the kicker. Before calling them, he supposedly searched her house and found her prescription pain pills. The police came, ruled it a suicide, and moved on. But here's the thing. Can someone really strangle themselves with a phone cord? It doesn't seem physically possible. And knowing the police department where I live, I wouldn't trust them to investigate it thoroughly. They're lazy and corrupt. But what really gets me is the position he said her body was in. One hand on one side and the other on the opposite side. That just doesn't add up. Doesn't your body fight to survive, to resist, when you're trying to take your own life? It doesn't sit right with me, and I can't shake the feeling that something else happened.